The first time Kang Junwoo saw her, he forgot to blink. It wasn't because she was loud. She wasn't. The crowd in Hongdae was louder. Tourists laughing, neon signs flickering, coins clinking into open instrument cases. The night air in Seoul carried music from every direction, but somehow the rhythm circling Ariel Johnson felt different. It was alive. Ariel had arrived in Seoul 3 months earlier with stubborn faith and 2 heavy suitcases. By day, she taught dance basics to immigrant kids in a borrowed studio space with cracked mirrors. By night, she claimed a patch of pavement in Hongdae and turned it into her stage. Her movements blended Afrobeat pulse with sharp Korean hip-hop precision. She didn't just dance. She declared herself. People stopped walking when she performed. Phones lifted. Strangers formed circles. Children copied her footwork. She laughed when they missed the steps, clapping encouragement. There was freedom in her shoulders, confidence in her hips, and fire in her smile. Junwoo stood across the street, hands in the pockets of his tailored black coat. Men stood behind him at a respectful distance. They were there for business, territory negotiations, silent exchanges, decisions that shaped the city's undercurrent. He was known as the Silent Tiger, a man who calculated every move. But in that moment his calculations failed him. He told himself he was observing the crowd, studying security, watching patterns. Yet his eyes returned to her every time. Ariel felt it, the weight of a stare that didn't feel like admiration. It felt assessing. She turned mid-spin and caught sight of him. Tall, composed, expression unreadable. Not smiling, not filming, just watching. She held his gaze deliberately while finishing her routine, refusing to look intimidated. The crowd erupted when she ended with a sharp stomp and a breathless grin. She bowed playfully, collecting tips and compliments. When she looked up again, he was gone. But something lingered. Junwoo walked away without a word, irritation flickering beneath his calm exterior. He didn't like distractions. He didn't like losing focus. And yet, as he stepped into the waiting car, one thought unsettled him. He needed to see her dance again. Kang Junwoo did not believe in coincidence. Men like him survived by knowing everything, who moved through his districts, who owed debts, who whispered threats in back rooms. So when the image of a foreign street dancer kept interrupting his thoughts, he treated it the same way he treated any unknown variable. He ordered information. Her name was Ariel Johnson. 24. From Atlanta. No criminal ties. No hidden sponsors. Just talent and stubborn independence. She rented a modest apartment near Hongdae and spent mornings teaching dance to immigrant children whose parents worked long shifts. At night, she performed in the open streets, rain or shine. The report should have satisfied him. It didn't. For 3 evenings straight, Junwoo found reasons to pass through Hongdae. Officially, he was inspecting territory. Unofficially, he stood at the edge of the gathering crowd, silent and still, watching her move like she carried sunlight in her bones. Ariel noticed him again. He didn't cheer. Didn't record. Didn't smile. He just observed, eyes steady, posture controlled. Something about him felt disciplined, almost military, but darker. People unconsciously shifted out of his path. Even the loudest men lowered their voices when he passed. On the 4th night, the sky cracked open without warning. Rain poured hard and sudden, scattering the audience. Speakers sparked. Dancers cursed and ran for cover. Ariel tried to drag her equipment toward a storefront awning, her sneakers slipping against the soaked pavement. Her foot twisted. She braced for impact. But strong hands caught her before she hit the ground. For a moment there was no city noise. Only rain striking concrete and her pulse hammering in her ears. She looked up. It was him. Up close, he was even more imposing, sharp jaw, dark eyes that studied her as if she were both fragile and fascinating. Water slid down his coat, yet he seemed unaffected by the storm. "You should watch your step," he said calmly. His voice was low, steady, controlled. Ariel pulled herself upright but didn't step away immediately. "You should stop watching me like I'm an investigation." A faint flicker of surprise crossed his face, so quick most people would miss it. "I was curious," he replied. "About my dance?" she challenged. "About you." The honesty unsettled her more than a lie would have. Thunder rolled overhead. One of his men approached with an umbrella, but Junwoo waved him back without breaking eye contact. For the first time in years, Kang Junwoo felt something dangerously unfamiliar. Interest. And Ariel Johnson realized the quiet man in the rain was not just a stranger. He was a storm she hadn't prepared for. If you're hooked already, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to follow Ariel and Junwoo's journey in the next chapter of I Lost Control. Ariel Johnson did not scare easily, but she refused to be studied like a mystery someone intended to solve. The rain had stopped by the next evening, leaving the streets of Hongdae shining beneath the lights of Seoul. Music pulsed from nearby cafes, and the usual crowd gathered once more. Ariel stretched near her speaker, pretending she hadn't already scanned the street for a tall man in a black coat. He appeared 10 minutes into her set. So, watching. After finishing her routine, she wiped sweat from her brow and walked straight toward him before her nerves could argue otherwise. Okay, she said, folding her arms. You've been showing up all week. You're either a fan who forgot how to clap or you're following me. His expression didn't shift. I don't follow people. Then why are you here? Pause. Because I want to be. The directness knocked the edge off her irritation, but only slightly. That's not an answer. I was curious, he said again. You move like you're not afraid of anything. She tilted her head. And you stand like you're afraid to feel anything. For the first time, something almost like amusement touched his eyes. Before either could say more, raised voices interrupted them. 3 men approached Ariel's equipment, laughing in a way that didn't feel friendly. One nudged her speaker with his foot. You dance nice, one of them mocked. Maybe dance somewhere else. Ariel stepped forward. Back off. The tallest of the men reached toward her arm. And suddenly froze. Junwoo hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't even moved quickly. He simply stepped between them, gaze sharpening into something cold enough to silence the air. Leave, he said quietly. It wasn't a threat. It was a command. The men recognized him. Fear flickered across their faces before they retreated without another word. Ariel stared at him once they were gone. Who are you? Someone who doesn't like seeing talent interrupted. That's not what I meant. His jaw tightened slightly. You don't need to know details that would make your life complicated. She studied him carefully now. The power. The restraint. The way the street itself seemed to respect him. You're dangerous, she said softly. Sometimes. And yet you helped me. A long silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken truths. I don't interfere without reason, he admitted. Then what's your reason? His gaze softened just barely. You. The word lingered between them, fragile and electric. 2 different worlds stood face to face under city lights. One built on rhythm and resilience, the other on control and quiet authority. Neither of them realized yet that walking away would soon become impossible. If you're loving this slow burn romance, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for Chapter 4 of I Lost Control. Ariel Johnson believed in earning everything. So when the notice appeared on the cracked glass door of her rented studio, lease terminated, she read it twice before the meaning settled heavily in her chest. The landlord refused to meet her eyes when she confronted him later that afternoon. He mumbled something about new ownership and unexpected pressure. The rent had always been paid on time. The children who filled the room every morning had never caused trouble. None of it made sense. But Ariel had already begun to understand that in parts of Seoul, decisions weren't always about paperwork. That night she didn't perform. Instead, she sat alone in the empty studio, staring at the mirrored wall that had reflected her growth and her students' laughter. She refused to cry. She had not crossed continents to be pushed out quietly. The door opened without a knock. She didn't jump. Somehow she already knew who it was. Kang Junwoo stepped inside, his presence filling the small room with calm authority. He glanced at the notice taped to the glass. This is connected to me, he said. She stood. What do you mean? Rival groups are testing boundaries. Your studio sits in my territory. My studio isn't a battlefield, she snapped. His expression remained steady. They want my attention. This is how they get it. Anger flared in her eyes. So I'm collateral damage? No, his voice softened. Your leverage. Silence thick in the air. I can fix this, he continued. The lease. The ownership. It can remain yours. She shook her head immediately. I don't need charity. It isn't charity. Then what is it? He stepped closer, not threatening, just honest. Protection. Ariel searched his face. And what does protection cost? Nothing. Nothing comes free. You don't belong to me, he said quietly. I just don't want your light to go out. The word struck deeper than she expected. For a man feared across districts, his tone carried no demand. No ownership. Just certainty. She walked past him, pacing. If I accept, people will say I'm yours. They already talk. I don't want to owe you. He met her gaze directly. Then don't. Keep your independence. Keep your name. I won't take either. For the first time since the notice appeared, her frustration eased. This wasn't about control. It was about choice. And Kang Junwoo was offering her one. Outside, the city hummed with secrets and shifting power. Inside the small studio, two stubborn hearts stood at the edge of something fragile. A partnership neither of them fully understood. If you're enjoying this unfolding romance, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to follow what happens next in Chapter 5 of I Lost Control. The city never warned you before it turned violent. Ariel had just finished dismissing her last group of students when she heard the distant echo of raised voices outside the studio. It wasn't unusual, Hongdae carried noise like a second heartbeat, but something about the tension in the air made her pause. Then the door opened. Kang Junwoo stepped inside. He was still standing tall, still composed, but not untouched. His coat was slightly torn at the sleeve, and there was a faint cut near his brow. It wasn't severe, but it didn't belong on a man who always looked immovable. Her breath caught. What happened? Nothing that concerns you, he replied automatically. She crossed her arms. You walked in bleeding. It concerns me. For a moment he looked like he might argue. Then he didn't. He removed his coat slowly, revealing more signs of a confrontation he had clearly handled, but not without effort. Rivals, he said simply. They wanted a message delivered. And you answered. I always do. Ariel grabbed the small first aid kit she kept for her students. She motioned for him to sit. Surprisingly, he obeyed. As she cleaned the cut on his brow, her movements were careful but firm. You can't keep pretending you're untouchable. I don't pretend, he said quietly. I calculate. She glanced at him. And what happens when the calculations fail? His jaw tightened slightly. They don't. But his voice lacked its usual certainty. The room felt smaller somehow, quieter. No music. No students. Just the hum of the city outside and the steady sound of their breathing. You scare people, she said softly. I know. You don't scare me. That made him look at her fully. Maybe you should be, he murmured. She finished tending the cut and stepped back, but something in his expression stopped her. Beneath the control, beneath the discipline, there was exhaustion. Not physical. Emotional. You carry everything alone, don't you? She asked. He didn't answer. Instead, his breathing shifted, just slightly uneven. Without overthinking it, Ariel stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fragile. It was steady. For a split second he froze. Then his arms came around her, tight, protective, almost desperate. His forehead rested lightly against hers. I lost control, he admitted in a low whisper. The moment I saw you dance. Her heart skipped. For the first time, the feared silent tiger wasn't calculating. He was simply holding on. If this chapter touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue the journey in Chapter 6 of I Lost Control. Power never moved quietly in Seoul. Within days of Kang Junwoo being seen near Ariel's studio, whispers traveled through back alleys, private lounges, and dimly lit offices. The silent tiger had taken interest in someone. Not a business partner. Not a political ally. A street dancer. To his enemies, that sounded like weakness. To his allies, it sounded like risk. Ariel noticed the change before anyone explained it to her. Fewer strangers lingered near her performances. Some shop owners offered polite smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Even her landlord suddenly became cooperative again. Protection had a presence. And it was visible. Junwoo, however, began to pull back. He stopped appearing every night. His messages grew shorter. Meetings replaced quiet conversations. The distance was deliberate. So Ariel did what she always did when faced with confusion. She confronted it. She found him outside a private building known for hosting business dinners. Two of his men stiffened when they saw her approach, but Junwoo raised a hand to signal she was allowed through. You're avoiding me, she said without greeting. I'm protecting you. By disappearing? By limiting exposure. She exhaled sharply. You think I don't see what's happening? People are watching me differently. That's exactly why I need space between us. Her eyes flashed. I didn't ask you to decide that alone. His tone hardened slightly. This world is not yours. And you think I don't have my own battles? She shot back. You think moving across the world didn't come with risks? Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't empty, it was charged. I won't let them use you, he said firmly. You don't get to push me away to make yourself feel in control. The words landed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. If they believe you matter to me, they will test that. And if I matter to you? She asked quietly. His expression softened despite himself. They will test it harder. She didn't retreat. Then we face it smarter. Not apart. That night, instead of parting ways in tension, they sat on the quiet steps outside her studio long after the streets emptied. They talked, not about rivals or territory, but about childhoods. About dreams. About what it meant to carry responsibility too young. For once, Junwoo wasn't the silent tiger. He was just a man trying not to lose something precious. And Ariel wasn't a target. She was a choice. If you're invested in their journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue with Chapter 7 of I Lost Control. The night of the showcase began like every other performance night in Seoul. Bright lights, restless crowds, and music vibrating through the pavement. But Ariel felt it before she saw it. A shift. The air wasn't excited. It was watchful. Her crew stood behind her, stretching and laughing, unaware of the unfamiliar men positioned just beyond the crowd. They weren't cheering. They weren't recording. They were observing. Ariel refused to let unease steal her focus. When the music started, she moved with confidence, her body slicing through rhythm, commanding attention the way she always did. The crowd responded instantly, clapping and cheering. Midway through the routine, one of the unfamiliar men stepped forward, intentionally blocking part of the performance circle. The music faltered. Her crew hesitated. The man smiled, not kindly. "You dance well," he called out loudly. "It would be unfortunate if this place became unsafe." The message was clear. This wasn't about her talent. It was about leverage. Before Ariel could respond, another presence entered the circle. Calm. Measured. Kang Junwoo. He didn't rush. He didn't shout. He simply stepped beside Ariel, his posture relaxed but unyielding. The crowd instinctively parted. The men who had interrupted her stiffened. "You've delivered your warning," Junwoo said evenly. "Now leave." One of them scoffed. "We're just enjoying the show." "Then enjoy it from a distance." The quiet authority in his voice left no room for argument. The men exchanged glances before slowly retreating into the crowd. The tension didn't explode. It dissolved. Ariel exhaled slowly as the music resumed. This time she danced even harder, stronger, sharper, unafraid. The performance ended with thunderous applause. Later, when the crowd thinned, she turned to him. "You didn't get angry," she said softly. "I don't waste anger when strategy works." "You could have escalated it." "And prove them right?" he asked. She studied him differently now, not just as a powerful man, but as a leader carrying invisible weight. "They were testing you," she realized. "They were testing us." The words settled between them. Without hesitation, Ariel stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Not because she was frightened, but because she chose to stand beside him. For a moment, he allowed himself to lean into the embrace. Not as a boss. Not as a protector. Just as Kang Junwoo. And in that quiet street, beneath city lights and fading echoes of music, they understood something unspoken. This was no longer curiosity. It was loyalty. If you're loving this powerful slow-burn romance, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we move into Chapter 8 of I Lost Control. Power always demanded a price. Kang Junwoo had paid it for years without hesitation. Control. Discipline. Distance. Those were the rules that kept him untouchable in the shifting undercurrents of Seoul. But now those rules were bending. The meeting room was silent except for the low hum of city traffic outside tinted windows. His most trusted advisor stood across from him, concern etched carefully beneath professional calm. "They see her as your weakness," the man said. Stepping back from operations now would create instability. Junwoo's gaze remained steady. Instability can be managed. Not if rivals believe you're distracted. He didn't answer immediately. For the first time in years, his decisions were not purely strategic. They were personal. Later that evening, Ariel arrived at the studio earlier than usual. She hadn't meant to overhear anything, but when she stepped inside the private hallway near his building, fragments of conversation reached her. Transition leadership. Reduce visibility. Too risky. Her heart tightened. When she entered the room fully, both men fell silent. Junwoo's advisor excused himself, leaving them alone. "You're stepping down," she said quietly. "I'm restructuring." "Because of me." He held her gaze. "Because I won't allow you to become collateral damage." Frustration flared in her chest. "I never asked you to shrink your world for me." "I'm not shrinking it." "You are," she insisted. You're trying to erase parts of yourself so I feel safer. He stepped closer, voice controlled but intense. You deserve safety. And you deserve to be who you are without apology. Silence filled the room, not hostile but heavy with truth. I don't want to be the reason you abandon everything you built, she continued. I chose you knowing your world wasn't simple. He studied her carefully. You don't understand the cost. Then let me stand beside you when it's paid. Those words shifted something inside him. For years, love had meant vulnerability. Vulnerability meant exposure. Exposure meant defeat. But Ariel wasn't asking him to surrender. She was asking for partnership. I won't let this life consume you, he said finally. And I won't let fear dictate our future, she replied. They stood inches apart, neither yielding, both certain. This wasn't about control anymore. It was about choice. And for the first time, Kang Junwoo realized that strength didn't mean standing alone. Sometimes it meant standing together. If you're invested in their journey toward forever, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we move into Chapter 9 of I Lost Control. Change did not arrive with celebration in Seoul. It arrived with resistance. When Kang Junwoo announced the restructuring of his operations, the reaction was immediate. Some allies questioned his timing. Others doubted his resolve. Rivals assumed weakness. But Junwoo had never acted impulsively, not even for love. He shifted investments into legitimate enterprises, real estate, tech startups, cultural sponsorships. Old ties that thrived on violence were severed carefully, strategically. There were tense negotiations, quiet betrayals, and difficult goodbyes. Leadership positions were reassigned. Territories were converted into monitored business zones. He wasn't abandoning power. He was redefining it. Ariel watched the transformation from a respectful distance. She understood that this wasn't something she could guide for him. It was his evolution to choose. Meanwhile, her own world was expanding. Her dance crew had been invited to compete in an international cultural showcase hosted in the heart of the city. What began as street performances had grown into something recognized, something official. On the night of the event, the theater buzzed with energy. Performers from different countries filled the backstage area, stretching and rehearsing final steps. Ariel stood before her team, steady and focused. No matter what happens, she told them, we dance like we belong. Because they did. When the curtain rose, the stage lights illuminated movement that blended continents. Afrobeat rhythms woven seamlessly with Korean hip-hop precision. It wasn't just choreography. It was identity. From the audience, Kang Junwoo watched without guards flanking him. No shadows. No secrecy. Just quiet pride. He saw the confidence in her stance, the joy in her expression, the way the crowd responded to her authenticity. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was thriving. When the winners were announced, Ariel's crew stood frozen for a split second before their name echoed through the theater. Cheers erupted. Backstage later, she spotted him waiting near the exit. Not hidden. Not distant. You came, she said softly. I said I would. You didn't stand in the shadows. I'm done standing there. She smiled, relief and admiration mixing in her eyes. The city outside felt different now, not because it had changed overnight but because they had. He had chosen evolution. She had chosen trust. And together they were building something that no rival could threaten. Not fear. Not control. But a future. If you're ready for their forever, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as we move into the final chapter of I Lost Control. Seoul sparkled under a sky free of clouds, the city lights reflecting on the river as if celebrating the night itself. Ariel Johnson stood at the front of her newly opened dance academy, her heart swelling with a quiet pride. For years she had dreamed of a place where children of every background could learn to dance, not just for performance but for expression, for joy, for freedom. Tonight, that dream had become reality. Students, families, and friends filled the space, their excitement contagious. The walls echoed with laughter, footsteps, and the gentle thrum of music, the life of the city woven into the rhythm of the room. She turned when a familiar shadow appeared in the doorway. Kang Junwoo. Not in a suit of power, not in the black coat that had once inspired fear, but simply himself, quiet, composed, present. You came, she said, a smile tugging at her lips. I promised, he replied, eyes scanning the room with a mixture of pride and awe. He approached, blending into the crowd until he was by her side. Around them, the academy buzzed with energy, but in that moment, it felt as though time had slowed. Ariel took his hand, interlacing fingers without hesitation. You've done this all on your own, he said softly, voice tinged with admiration. But it seems even better than I imagined. She shrugged, looking at the children practicing their steps, the mirrors reflecting their determination. I had the right inspiration. He smirked faintly. I'm honored then. Ariel laughed, then turned to the crowd. Everyone. Tonight isn't just about the academy, it's about what we can do together. The applause was instant, warm, and genuine. But she didn't look at it. She looked at him. Slowly, deliberately, she stepped forward and hugged him. It wasn't a fleeting embrace, it was a choice, steady and unshakable. He hesitated for only a heartbeat before wrapping his arms around her, calm and strong, letting the world fall away. Outside, the streets of Seoul carried on with their familiar hum, but inside they had carved a sanctuary of their own. No shadows. No whispers. No threats. Only them, together. For Kang Junwoo it wasn't about control anymore. It was about choice. And he chose her. Every day. For Ariel it wasn't about proving herself anymore. It was about sharing life with someone who had seen her fire and matched it with his own. And as they walked side by side through the city lights after the celebration, neither feared the night, nor the future. They had faced it together and that was enough. They had found forever, without fear, without compromise, without losing themselves.